Alright, so we're out here doing a yard project, and this blue tarp looked kind of fun, so we're gonna try something out, see how it goes. And we're back again. So we had a lot of fun outside with the makeshift slip and slide setup that we had. I think it's very important to try and find the fun where you can find it, and make it when you can't, because that way you can find something to lift your spirits when crap like this happens. This being the crashing of my tank. So, you know, having something else to do to keep your spirits up is always good. What I'm going to get into now is basically why my tank crashed, the history of the tank, and what I want to do with it go forward. You want to say something?
Yeah, I have ice cream.
You have ice cream. Finding joy in life, and sometimes it's just ice cream. A lot of times it might just be ice cream. Anyway, so in this tank I had 2 clownfish, 2 damsels, and I also had some shrimp.
And you had a blue fish with the yellow fin.
That was one of the damsels. What else I have in here?
That white fish.
That was a damsel.
Yeah.
What was his name?
I remember the white goblin.
The white goblin. The white goblin.
We named him the white goblin.
And what was the blue fish?
I forgot. It was like something with a B, like bursty, something like that.
No, Sparky.
Oh yeah.
Sparky. Yeah, the blue damsel was Sparky, and then we had 2 clownfish. Now I've had this tank for about 2 years. Set up pretty good. I've had over the course battles with green algae when I first set up the tank, but predominantly I've battled most with diatoms and slime algae, and most recently, right before the tank crashed, I was battling a lot of sponges. And so part of the reason why the tank crashed was that I decided to get rid of the sand in the tank and also re-obfuscate this section of the, hey, this is Luna coming to say hi, this section of the tank. Taking out the sand and the rocks, I know causes issues with releasing all of the nutrients and stuff that's down here. But I did do a huge water change right after that, about 50%, and everything was doing fine. I didn't have a whole lot of corals, had some soft corals, some hammers and stuff like that, but the fish and the corals were doing okay right after that. The issue came in when I threw these rocks back into the tank. I waited too long, they dried out, and I totally forgot about cycling them again before putting them back in the tank. My ammonia spiked up real quick and everything died in under 24 hours. It was probably, I want to say, 16 hours, and everything was dead. The corals were bleached white, the fish were dead, very, 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 very rapidly. And it was about, I want to say, about half the rocks is what I took out and then replaced. So without having any sand or anything else in there to counteract all of that coming back into the tank, it just crashed very rapidly. Killed pretty much my entire tank. I didn't know what I wanted to do with the tank after that. I thought about completely dismantling it or turning it into a freshwater fish tank, which might be a little bit easier to manage. But as you can see, the fish tank being in the wall, it's kind of a big deal deciding not to continue the hobby. And also it was very fun. It was very entertaining, but things like this happen. So I'm not an expert, I'm just learning, I'm just coming into the hobby. So this was really one of those learning moments. What I want to do now is stabilize the tank and get a better maintenance regimen that I can stick to more readily than what I was doing previously. I have a science experiment in the closet back here, which is where this tank is actually sitting in, and I've tried all sorts of things. I've always been changing the setup, changing the sump, changing the filtration setup, trying to get a better regimen for maintenance, but not being very successful in doing so. So I'm hoping that now I'm able to start over and start from scratch, at the same time starting a new maintenance cycle that I can stick to and adhere to much better than previously. So I'm going to go into the back of the tank now and show you what the setup is like right now. And then later on, I'll probably cut this into 2 videos, do kind of like what I'm expecting my new maintenance regimen is going to be. And this is by far not a how-to or it's not a how-to. I don't know how else to explain that. It's really this is how I'm doing it, follow me along for the ride, and let's see how this tank progresses. This is part of why I wanted to do the YouTube channel, was because since I was having a fresh start on the tank, I thought it'd be neat to basically blog and vlog the progression of this tank over time, and hopefully recording this helps me actually maintain that that schedule of regular water changes and stuff like that. So I'm hoping that the channel helps me be a little bit more consistent at the same time. So let's get to it. We'll go on to the back. Before I go back there though, I want to say that since it's not a brand new setup, I did drop the rocks back in here. I removed the sand, so it's almost a bare bottom tank. There's just a little bit of sand in there. But since dropping this section of the rocks back into the tank, I do have, again, some more diatom and brown algae growing on this section of the rocks over here, and a little bit on the glass over there and over there. So I'm not planning on restocking this tank with fish or corals right away. I really do want to make sure that I can cycle this, get it clean, get a regimen that's working, and get a water change schedule that's working, that actually clears up the algae that I have in there now and makes everything look clean. One of the main reasons I also removed the sand was because I only had this one power head. I got 2 power heads now, but I had 1 power head and I was never getting enough flow in this tank that would actually pick up the detritus from the ground and up into one of the filters, or I've had overflow filters as well, and nothing was really ever getting picked up from the water column for as much flow as I have. Now I have 2 power heads and I still have a pile of detritus that builds up in the back. I don't think there's enough flow other than a raging river that was actually going to pick up detritus all the way up to the top. So a lot of that it has to do with siphoning it out, and I'll get kind of into that when I get to the back of the tank. But basically, I was never done vacuuming out the detritus before my bucket was filled with water. So if I was planning on doing a 4-gallon water change, I siphon and siphon, and my bucket is full of 4 gallons, but I'm not done siphoning out the detritus. So it was kind of frustrating battling the amount of detritus I had in there, and my tank wasn't really overstocked. Like I said, I had the 4 fish, a couple of hermit crabs, and I had some shrimp in there at one time. I did have a flame angel in there at one time, but the flame angel lasted about a week, and that was over a year ago. Actually, I had a wrassle too. I had a wrassle in this tank, and when I bought the flame angel, I had it in a quarantine tank for about 3 days, and then I dropped it into this tank and noticed after that it did have ick, and it died and my wrassle died. So it went out and my wrassle went out shortly after that. So, but everything else kind of survived. That was about a year ago though. So yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at the setup in the back, and I'll show you what I got going on back there. Before I head to the back, I thought I'd actually also show you a little bit of the diatom algae that I had growing, just so that when we see the progression of these videos, hopefully we might see a much cleaner tank a couple of weeks from now. Alright, let's go look at the back. Alright, so here's the closet that the tank actually sits in. Alright. And what I have running on the tank right now after it crashed is just a protein skimmer and a hang on the back filter. And the only thing I'm running on that is just media filter floss, just to kind of try and polish the water. I really like the way the water gets polished when you're using a filter floss. Although I do realize you have to change those out pretty much every 3 days or so. But that's very quick. I buy the filter floss at Walmart, or if I'm at the fish store, I'll get some at the fish store. And I cut them up in a bunch of squares, and that takes me 4 seconds to swap. So that's not much of a big deal. And protein skimmer is obviously not very hard to keep maintained. The hardest thing in a tank, in a setup like this, is really the water change. The water change is really what was killing me with the detritus and whatever diatom algae I was having. And I always try to make do without the water change and with supplementing other things. As you can see, I had vodka back there, which was probably causing me the issues with the sponges that I had growing. Adding the vodka probably increased the amount of sponges I had, as well as probably the slime too, I'm not sure. But I probably was not experienced enough to do the vodka dosing, although I never did have any parameter issues, which was probably due to the vodka dosing as well too. The corals never seemed to mind, the fish never seemed to mind, my parameters were fine, but a lot of sponges, lots of sponges. I also tried carbon and GFO. I had a pump on this side of the tank that would run into that little setup that I had that would just overflow. I'm not sure if you can see it there. It would flow back into the tank, and I used that little tank for several different things. I had it at one point as a macro algae. I had it as a little refugium. I had Chateo in there, but every time I try to set up a refugium, it caused me more algae in my display tank than any benefit. Again, probably due to the lack of sufficient water changes, but it definitely didn't help. By removing the refugium, I was always getting better water quality and better looking tank without the refugium. So I would probably leave that to a more advanced reefer as well. So what I'm going to try to do with this setup this time around is try and keep it as simple as possible and try to do as minimal as possible with the setup, but keep it a little bit more, and that's more on schedule. I also do have 4, let me see if I can get them here, 4 T5s. I have 2 of the white ones, and I don't know what the grade is on them, but, and then I have 1 blue and 1 purple. All of them are the same brand of this Coral Life, but 2 white, 1 blue, 1 purple. I really like the colors, how it looks, and the corals, how they look like that, but it wasn't a 2 blue look. As you can see, my background is blue. So that's about it. That's what I have going on right now, and I'll show you in the next video what the new regimen is going to be for water changes and schedules and what that's going to look like. I do have an RODI system set up. I have the small RODI buddy for the water changes, so I am using that good water. I did have a sump set up here previously. I had overflows. I had 2 different types of overflows, but they always typically ended up failing on me. They were the DIY type overflow systems. The siphon on them would break after about a week or 2. You would get a little small bubble at the beginning, which wouldn't cause you any flow issues, but then over time that bubble would grow and the siphon would break. I'll try to post up some pictures right about now. That kind of show what the 2 overflow systems is that I use, the DIYs. I'm not saying that they're I'm not saying don't use them, I'm just saying that I didn't have good experiences with them. And also when you don't know exactly how to build those and you end up having to build 4 or 5, you end up spending the money you would have if you would have just bought a overflow system straight from the store. So sometimes saving some money and sometimes not saving some money. You know, you're gonna have to kind of pick your battles there. That is not a name brand protein skimmer, but it is rated for 150 gallons, and I'm running about a 40-gallon tank, so I am running apparently a sufficient enough skimmer. I thought that it was like a 90 skimmer, so I was thinking about upgrading it, but now I'm not sure. It is rated at 150, but again, it's not one of the, you know, fancy name brand ones, so I'm not sure if I'm going to upgrade that or not anymore. I'm going to see what I can do with the water changes. I might rebuild the sump that's on top of here, but I'm thinking about possibly, since I don't have to worry about the sump being down here, and the reason for that is that my fish tank sits pretty tall. I will show you more or less how it looks like. So that's me, and that's my fish tank. So doing water changes is pretty much a pain, because anytime I have to get water way up over my head, if I'm doing a 4 or 5 gallon water change with one of the buckets, it's a good pain and a good hassle to get water changes done on a tank that sits so high. Also, if you want to do a sump system that sits down under there, you have to get a return pump that's powerful enough to pump water over 6 feet head height. So that means your return pump has to be even more expensive. And 40-gallon tank, trying to do as much DIY setup as you can, trying to save money when you can. $200 something, $300 pump just isn't really what not really what I'm looking to do. So I am trying to do a sump system again, but I'm thinking about doing a sump system since I have the available space where the sump sits higher than the tank. So thinking the top of the sump might sit somewhere around here, and I might use the pump that's in here right now to pump water out of the tank into the sump somewhere on this side, and have the water flow go through the media, the protein skimmer, and then back into the tank by overflowing back into the tank. That would save me having to get a more powerful pump system, and also save me from overflows. When I would have the overflow system, if the siphon would break, I never had the water really level to the point where it wouldn't overflow. Either my sump would overflow or my tank would overflow. If the if the overflow stopped and the pump kept going, my tank would overflow. And if the power went out, my sump would overflow. So I'm hoping that this new system that I'll set up would avoid any of the water overflows. So I'm thinking about adding another shelf system here and adding a sump. We'll see. I don't know, but another DIY project that would give me some time. My lights are hanging off of a board system up there and some chains. I really like that setup, even though it is a very much cheap DIY. So you can laugh at that as much as you want, but I love it, because that light gets in your way when you're trying to work in the tank, but I'm able to just move them up very easily, just in 2 seconds move those lights up as much as I want, and that entire top of the tank is free. But getting up there, I do need a stool, and it's so tall. So yeah. Alright guys, if I missed anything, maybe I'll catch it in the next video and update you that way, but I think that's all for now. Thanks for watching. Deuces.